One of the things that has always struck me is that the formal education system in this country has been very slow to adapt to technology and some of the changes, and even to kind of adopt social media as, first of all, as reality,
Hmm.
and secondly, as a tool that can be used as part of the educational process. So it's interesting hearing you say that, and I'm pleased the way that you explained that too, because sometimes people, and it's usually people from older generations, will get hung up on this idea that um, younger generations seem to always be focused on their devices, or always looking at their phone, or whatever kind of device that there is. And they don't really realize that people also are thinking, they're absorbing things that are taking place. It
Yeah.
isn't like they've just stepped out of consciousness of the world, even if they're walking along with headphones on. That's something that's very important. And I think sometimes we kind of, in the formal education process, we kind of disconnect with younger generations at times because there isn't that kind of leeway to be able to adapt to a discussion about something that somebody saw on TikTok or on Instagram, um, in a classroom. Whereas somebody brings up something like that in a classroom of mine, I'm going to get to it. It may not be immediately, but I'm going to get to it that day, um, because it was important enough for the person to bring it up. And I want to hear more about it. I want to hear the thought process that's associated with it, and hear other people's opinions and expressions associated with that. That's, to me, is part of how we really communicate, and realistically should be how the learning process takes place. Um, but, that's also some of my uh, thought process and approach, I guess, with the classroom too. So I appreciate your thoughts and you sharing what you are with us. One of the thoughts I had too in this discussion, I should mention the fact that for folks who've just joined us in discussion, I said this at the beginning of our chat today. We were joined on our program by the podcast director for Afrosoundz Radio. Sean Ibanibo is talking with us on our program. I'm Bob Salter. We didn't touch upon exactly what Afrosoundz Radio is. How do you explain it?
Um, so about say 4 or 5 years ago now, our founder approached me and we had a conversation about Afrosounds or Afrobeats. It was a concept back then. Hey, let's create an internet radio for people that want to connect with um, African music because I think back then you had Davido, the Nigerian artist Davido was just breaking into the US market with his first big song, Fire and Fall. And Wizkid was beginning to gain some international recognition with his song Legba that had Drake on a remix with it. Prior to that, we had P Square. P Square had this big, massive song called "Chop My Money," and but they were just like individual little songs come up, they pop up to the surface, and they felt like they fade away a little bit. But we spoke actually like, well, there's so many other people that no one knows about. There's so many other artists that no one know about, and I would like to create a platform for them to shine. And the thought moved forward from there, and I'm glad that today that it went from the drawing board to an actual reality. Um, so the radio station is basically, we have DJs that basically just bring you new sound or new flavor from Africa. Being a Nigerian, my default will most likely be artists coming out of Nigeria, you know. But when I go on the station, I get to hear artists from Ghana, from Kenya, from South Africa, and the whole African continent. And I don't just hear what's on the radio. Yes, I know Love Wanting Things on the radio. Yes, I know Essence by Whiskey is on the radio. Yes, I know all of this Burna Boy is on the radio. But when I go on, I get to hear Shatta Wale, I get to hear uh, Fireboy, I get to hear Omale, I get to hear so many other people, you know, on the platform. And I think that's great for one, for the artists, and also for our listeners, because if you're a fan of the music, if you're a fan of what African artists are doing on the global scale and their flavor of music, Afrosoundz Radio is a great place to come listen to it. And also, I have some blogs up there, some posts, you know, like an album review or just talking about African music in general that you could read. It's usually I try to keep it short, under 5 minutes. Each one of them is like a 5 minutes read. Something that people could definitely enjoy and get to listen to the music. There's no subscription. There are very limited ads at this point. But it's again, if you love the music, tune in, share with your friends, afrosoundsradio.com, and I'm pretty sure you'll find you'll find it pleasurable.
Okay, and that's Afrosoundz. That's Soundz
Yes, sir.
radio. Afrosoundz radio. All
Absolutely.
one word.com.
.com.
Now,
Yeah.
when we talk about Black music history, um, how do you explain? This might seem overly simplistic as a question, but I'm going to pose it nonetheless. How do you explain its importance, its significance? Um, and who do you point to as some of your favorite artists?
Some of my favorite artists of all time, no, I could definitely call, like I just mentioned earlier, I mentioned Jay-Z. Jay-Z is my absolute, I'm a huge Jigga fan. Um, Tupac, Nas, 50 Cent on the hip hop side. I do love Boyz II Men, and again, Mariah Carey, Jodeci on the R&B side. But when it from music coming out of Africa, Fela Kuti, Wizkid, Davido, Burna Boy, I love their music, but I'm a big fan of guys like Runtown, Fino, Omale, Yemi Alade, Falls. Falls is a At this point, Falls is a comedic rapper. His music is very good. But what I like about it is this is the difference. You know, if you look at American hip hop today, there's a lot of similarities in the new wave or the new sound coming out. For Afro beats and for Afro sound is they there's some similarities, but at the same time, everyone is trying to be very unique or trying to establish their own brand. Um, So the music coming out of Ghana will have that Ghanaian flavor. You know, there're gonna be some sequence that you wouldn't hear in the Nigerian music. Think about something like that's been blowing up everywhere. Dorime. So you want to bump, right? Think about a song like that that was a Nigerian artist collaborating with a Ghanaian producer remixing a French song, right?
Mm,
That's what Afrobeat is about. You know, you pull flavor. The content is so big and so unique that you could pull flavor from everywhere, you know, and create a new sound. You know, Burna Boy calls his music Afro fusion, and he described it as a pizza. You know, and that's what makes Afrobeats beautiful. That's what makes the sound make it different and uh and unique. You know, is I could go on. I could talk about Afro beats for forever, and at the same time, it sounds like I'm rambling, and I don't want to ramble. I don't want to bore you with my love for Afro beats. But it is. I enjoy it. It's not because I'm African, it's just because it's so diverse and it's so beautiful, and there are so many players in the game that you won't get bored listening to the music or listen to the genre rather.
Why is the genre so popular in Black and Brown communities all over this country?
Uh, I cannot give a specific reason. Oh, this is why it's so popular. But I think when we had the Caribbean music wave, you think about when Shaggy and Sean Paul were on the scene, they brought something different from everything else we've been hearing for a long time. And I think that's what made Caribbean music at that time very special. And we're seeing that today again with Afrobeat. It's different. Now it's different, it's danceable. The lyrics are there's simplicity in the lyrics. It's not overly complex. It's not like an Eminem song that there's so many rhyme patterns that you could get dizzy listening to it. But it's simple. You can easily dance to it. And another thing that's make it as I think that has pushed the popularity of it is TikTok. And people dancing to it. People dancing to the music on TikTok, people dancing to the music on Instagram Reels. That has just made more and more young people in a bid to emulate their peers, get out there and move and groove to it. For that moment, they are not too bothered about what's going on today in Europe. They're not too bothered about the stock market crashing or anything of that nature. In that moment, they are enjoying themselves. In that moment, they can be playful, and that's what, in my opinion, that's probably part of what is driving the popularity of Afrobeats.
And this is happening at a time um, when in this country um, rap and hip hop have, I guess, in a way, risen to a new level of acknowledgement, for lack of a better term. You think of the Super Bowl halftime show. Um, and the significance, the importance of the presentation that took place there. But I guess the question I'm posing is, are we seeing a shift from a cultural standpoint in this country that, in a way, can also be tied to some of the changes we're seeing in appreciation of music? You used the term of fusion a couple of minutes ago. And it's almost like there's a fusion of cultures taking place in this country.
Um, a little bit of both. I think the American appetite for anything foreign is unquenchable. Think about German vehicles. They, I think GM makes some of the best cars, but Americans just prefer their German luxury cars. Um, think about IKEA and stores like that. I think we have this insatiable appetite for anything foreign, and it's a little bit easier for us to digest and accept Afrosound because most of the big stars in the genre use English. Now, even if it's Pidgin, which is a Nigerian English, broken down English. Even if it's Pidgin, there's still words in there that you could easily relate to. You could like, oh, what does that mean? Think of like I said earlier, like seeking love, wanting to. So you know what love is. Okay, what does wanting to mean? Now you could easily Google it up. You know, we have social media, we have people that are out here trying to explain the lyrics to you. Uh, but that's appetite is what's driving the popularity of it. And being that is danceable also works. As far as the culture goes, I think American culture has they are part of America that has probably never heard an Afrobeat song, right? The areas that the songs are flourishing, they are doing very well. And I love that. I love again, like, if you go back to the beginning of our conversation, I said that's what I love about America, where I could come as I am, you know, and when I reach here, I don't feel so like I'm the only one here. There are communities, or my community is here, and I could easily blend into the system, you know, and not just have Nigerians support me, but I could find friends in Spanish people or Latinos. I could find friends in the Middle Eastern communities, you know, and stuff like that. That's what makes America beautiful. So if I'm coming, when I get to that point, I get to have my tacos with my Mexican friends. What do I give in exchange? You know, I give you whiskey, or I give you Omalay, or I give you rundown. You know, so there's that exchange of culture. Is that changing American culture? I don't know. But overall, I love the fact that we are constantly trading with each other and we're not all sitting in independent or individual cycles of just us, but we're rather reaching out to bring others in as much as we're giving to them as well.
Mm, a culture of inclusion as opposed to a culture of exclusion. Uh,
Absolutely.
very interesting. I want to close our discussion with some words that are attributed to you because when I read these words in preparation for our discussion today, this um, I thought was stated so well, it blew me away. And we read this as have this in front of me on a piece of paper. It's from Your Thoughts on Black History Month. I love that Martin Luther walked, Barack Obama ran, and Michael Strahan went to space as a tourist. So, yeah, I love Black History Month. I just think that is absolutely beautifully stated.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And it probably reflects the feelings of an awful lot of people, too. Sean, thank you very much for a wonderful discussion. Sean Ibanibo is the podcast director at Afrosoundz Radio. That's Afrosoundz Radio, AFROSOUNDZ Afrosoundz Radio. That's all is one word, .com. Thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts on our program today.
But thank you very much for having me. I do appreciate you.
Sean Ibanibo, the podcast director at Afrosoundz Radio. Hopefully, you enjoyed our discussion with Sean and also the fact that we were able to have a discussion that what some might view as a typical discussion on the topic. This is one that hopefully made you think as you were listening to Sean's words and maybe even some of the things that I said as well in the discussion. It's kind of what we try to do on this program on Sunday mornings. At 7 this morning, we've got CBS Sports Radio by, along at 8 o'clock. After a look around the sporting world, Rick Wolf is by. Fabulous Sports Edge program, as usual on Sunday mornings. And along at 9 o'clock, now one of the staples of Sunday morning, Mark Belusis will be by. And it's a full day of sports activity and sports talk here on The Fan.